Tevin, what the hell are you doing?
Playing Metroid Prime Remastered.
Aren't you supposed to be working on the Zelda Marathon?
What's that?
Shouldn't you be playing Twilight Princess?
Fuck that game, it's not Metroid Prime. Oh. What the hell?
Just play the game, you get your stuff back, you can go back to Prime.
Alright, fine. Give it here.
And get the fuck out of my house!
Alright, now we're really getting to familiar territory. The last time I played this was summer of 2020 when I played the game on my Twitch channel. The first time I played it though, that's a bit trickier to nail down. I know for sure my first playthrough was on the Wii version, and at the time I didn't know the game was any different. I remember getting through all the dungeons, collecting items, I stabbed Ganondorf, and I think I enjoyed it? I couldn't figure out for a while whether or not I liked this game. It's kind of like my dilemma with Wind Waker now that I think about it. In 2016 when the HD remaster came out, I decided to go ahead and pick it up because I knew for a damn fact that in at least 2 years' time this son of a bitch was going to be hard to track down for an affordable price, and yep, there you go.
Sometime after Wind Waker's release, Nintendo thought it best to make a Zelda game cater to the series' Western audience. Like I mentioned last time, not everyone was on board for the new art direction Wind Waker brought to the series, and considered the jump from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to Wind Waker a bit too jarring. But when the next Zelda game after Wind Waker was teased at E3 2005, everyone blew their load so much at the same time that you could have sworn they would have had to grab every mop in a 3-mile radius and declare that theater a safety hazard. God damn. While a good majority of the fan base was excited for Wind Waker, everyone was ready for Twilight Princess. The wait was a bit painful thanks to the game being delayed a number of times, but fans were excited nonetheless. Part of that excitement came from the fact that not only was the game being released on the current gen console with the Nintendo GameCube, but it was also being released on the next generation console with the Nintendo Wii. Yeah, you thought Breath of the Wild did it first? Nah, you could thank Twilight Princess for starting that trend. Twilight Princess was a big game for the Wii, not only because of everyone's excitement and the game's sales figures, but also because the game was partially responsible for kickstarting the early years of the Wii's modding scene. No, I'm not kidding. It was one of the first games that allowed modders to hack the console without altering the hardware. They found a way to mess around with the opponent's name, and somehow that allowed them to take advantage of an exploit that could let them install homebrew software. While there was a lot of excitement brewing around the game's release, it was also raising a few eyebrows. The game has a major difference between its two original releases. Things were as the developers intended on the Nintendo GameCube version, but on the Wii, you use the Wii remote to swing your sword and aim some of your items. But since a majority of the population is right-handed, and since Link was left-handed, they flipped the whole game to accommodate for the motion controls. So if you're heading down a hallway that curves to the left in the GameCube version, that same hallway would curve to the right on the Wii version. I always found this decision to be a bit odd, but I will give Nintendo credit for choosing the most cost-effective decision. I'm sure if they decided to program everything for Link so that he'd be right-handed, the game would have taken even longer to come out. As a sort of holdover for Breath of the Wild, I guess, Nintendo released an HD remaster for the game with The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD in early 2016 for the Nintendo Wii U. While Wind Waker HD was developed in-house by Nintendo, Twilight Princess HD was developed by the Australian studio Tantalus Media, who developed such classic titles like The Polar Express, Funky Barn, and who could forget Mary, Kate, and Ashley Winner's Circle. There's also another title they developed that I'm a little bit more familiar with, but we could talk about that one later.
Once again, we come back to that follow-up to Ocarina of Time that everybody was looking for, but if they couldn't find it with Wind Waker, could they find it with this? Well, we have a plot to summarize first, so let's hop into that, and stop me if you've heard this one before. Let's delve into the Twilight, and let's take a look at the story of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess.
Why are you still here?
Weren't you the one just telling me to play the fucking game?
Alright, good point. I should probably stick around, make sure you do this correctly.
Alright, I'll squad. I thought you weren't that big into Zelda.
I mean, he's not my favorite Smash character.
Twilight Princess.
Who are you talking to?
Twilight Princess takes place back in the good old child timeline, a few hundred years after the events of Majora's Mask. We begin in the Ordana province of southern Hyrule in the Ordon village, a nice little farm village when the monkeys leave you alone and if the goats stay in the fucking ranch. You go back and you think about what you've done, you asshole. Our latest incarnation of Link resides here as an honest living ranch worker and is tasked by his mentor Russell to present a gift from the village to the royal family of Hyrule. But on the day of his departure, the village is attacked by Bulblins and the monsters kidnap the village children and Link's girlfriend, his love in business associate. Yeah, there we go. On the day of his departure, his village is attacked by Bulblins and the monsters kidnap the village children and Link's business associate Ilya. Link gives chase to the perpetrators and comes across this wall of darkness with a giant hand dragging him inside. Thanks to the Triforce of Courage that rests within him, Link is transformed into the form of a wolf and passes out. He awakes within the dungeons of Hyrule Castle and encounters this mysterious imp, Midna, who aids in his escape in exchange for his servitude. Midna and Link traverse their way out of the dungeon and they are greeted by the one and only Princess Zelda. Zelda explains that some time ago the castle was invaded by these shadow beasts and the self-proclaimed king of the Twilight Realm, Zant. Zelda laid down her arms and declared her surrender, and Zant shrouded the kingdom in twilight. Our new duo returned to the Ordana province to obtain a sword and shield and begin to go about getting rid of all the Twilight in the kingdom, and that's when they come into contact with the light spirits of Hyrule. Thanks to Zant, their spirits have been split into a bunch of these spirit fragments and have been scattered around the various regions of the kingdom. Link wastes no time piecing them back together, and upon returning the first spirit to normal, Link is bequeathed garb once worn by the hero. With Midna's instructions, he ventures off to the various parts of the kingdom in search of the few shadows, ancient artifacts of the Twilight people that were once used by these dark interlopers during a war for the Triforce before the light spirits sealed the dark power away. Link first heads deep into the Faron Woods to find the first piece, and eventually the two make their way to the Elden region to liberate it from Twilight. Link ends up finding the lost children, and after some quick sumo matches with the Gorons, he recovers the second piece of the View Shadow on Death Mountain. The two then make their way up to the northern regions of Hyrule and free the Zora tribe from their frozen prison. If I had a nickel for every time Zora's domain was frozen, I'd have 2 nickels.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Link also saves his business associate and this random-ass Zora kid, and after obtaining a Zora tunic, he heads to the depths of Lake Hylia and retrieves the final Fused Shadow. Immediately after his departure from the dungeon, Zant essentially kicks him in the dick and takes a few shadow pieces away, permanently transforms Link into the wolf, and uses the light spirit to almost kill Midna. With moments away from her death, Midna asks Link to take her back to Princess Zelda. Upon their arrival, Midna requests Zelda to transform Link back to normal, but the princess says that in order to remove the curse, he needs to travel to the Sacred Grove and pull out the Master Sword, the blade that's here for insurance money. Midna also asks Zelda to take Link to find the Mirror of Twilight, and because it's law that Zelda is not allowed to do anything in her own series, she sacrifices herself to save Midna from the brink. With Zelda now gone, Link and Midna head to the Sacred Grove and retrieve the Master Sword, and with Link restored to normal, the two head to the Arbiter's grounds in the Gerudo Desert to find the Mirror of Twilight. They end up getting to the mirror only to find it broken into 4 pieces. So then, with the guidance of the sages, who are just kinda here, Link and Midna travel across Hyrule to find the other 3 pieces of the mirror, with one in the mountains of Snow Peak, one in the ancient past within the old Temple of Time, and one high above the skies of Hyrule in the ancient city in the sky. With all the pieces collected in the mirror fully restored, the sages reveal that Zant was not able to completely destroy the mirror because he is not the true ruler of the Twilight Realm, and they reveal Midna to be that said true ruler. Midna was the one who was to ascend to the throne, and Zant didn't take that very well and subjected her to this imp form, and so she set out to collect the pieces of the Fused Shadow to exact her revenge on Zant. Link and Midna take the fight to Zant in the Twilight Realm, and after Zant has a random hissy fit of a boss battle, he reveals to the two that his god who blessed him with power has returned to the Light Realm and made his base at Hyrule Castle, and his god is Ganondorf.
Who?
No, for real, in the context of this story, why is Ganondorf even here? I mean, it's not like he comes completely out of nowhere. The sages do mention him at the beginning of the Mirror Quest, and Zant does hint early on in the game that someone else has blessed him with power. Back in olden times, Ganondorf was to be executed for his crimes back in Ocarina of Time, but before he died completely, the Triforce of Power managed to find its way to Ganondorf. So as a last-ditch effort, the sages sealed Ganondorf in the Twilight Realm. Using his powers, though, he gave Zant the abilities he used to dethrone Midna as ruler of the Twilight, and went to the Light Realm on his conquest so that Ganondorf could bring the light and shadow together and rule over all of it.
That bitch!
So after popping Zant like a balloon, holy shit, the two make their way back to Hyrule to confront Ganondorf. After possessing Zelda's body to do some traditional energy tennis and running around like a dipshit at Dark Beast Ganon, Ganondorf is taken down and Zelda is restored to normal. Midna sends away the hero and princess to take Ganondorf on alone with the power of the Fused Shadow, but she gets her ass royally handed to her on a Twilight platter.
Hey guys, what are you up to?
Playing Twilight Princess? Ganondorf just killed Midna.
That bitch.
That's what I'm saying!
Zelda calls on the light spirits to bless her with the light arrows, and Link begins one last confrontation with the King of Evil. Ganondorf is killed and pieces restored to Hyrule. The light spirits return Midna to her true form.
Mommy?
Ilia and the children return to the village, and the citizens of the kingdom celebrate the defeat of the Demon King. Link and Zelda see Midna off back to the Twilight Realm, but before her departure, she destroys the Mirror of Twilight, cutting off contact between the Realm of Light and Twilight. Link returns the Master Sword back to the Sacred Grove, and returns to Ordon Village to more than likely throw goats for the rest of his life, ending Twilight Princess. I did have some enjoyment with the story, but I'd be stupid not to admit that it has its issues. Let me start with some positives though. I absolutely adore Midna as a character. She's such a snarky asshole to start off, and she eventually begins to warm up to Link as their adventure goes along. She initially doesn't give a shit about Hyrule and just wants Zant's head on a stick. But after Zelda's sacrifice and her almost fucking dying, she gains new faith for Link and the people of Hyrule. Link may seem like the main protagonist of the story, but he's sort of in a secondary role, much like in Majora's Mask. This is Midna's story, and she makes it very entertaining. There are a lot of characters I like in this game, actually. The kids of Ordon, Telma, the patrons in Telma's bar, the Goron elders, Queen Rutella, the postman. They're all pretty good characters. One of the kids, Colin, even gets his own little character arc near the beginning of the game, and I kind of wish there was more of that. But other than those aspects, I could honestly give fuck all for any other parts of this narrative. Alright, let's open up that can of worms. Ganondorf did not need to be in this plot. I think Zant would have been fine enough on his own. Zant himself wasn't the greatest villain I've seen out there, but there is some entertainment to be had from him. He was genuinely threatening and imposing throughout most of his appearances in the game. Then at the Palace of Twilight, he goes insane, and it definitely threw me off, and not in a good way. I do like Zant going balls to the walls insane. That itself was very entertaining, but there needed to be way more of that throughout the story. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and if they stuck with one character trope, either the imposing serious invader or the unpredictable raging lunatic, I think Zant would have been a much better villain. He's okay at most. It also doesn't help that he gets overshadowed by Ganondorf at the end of the game. Look, I'm sorry, I love the King of Evil as much as the next guy, but I don't think he should have been in this story. I think surprise villains can be great if done well, but I don't think they did it good enough, and to have a legitimately interesting villain be tossed aside just so we could have another one-on-one fight between the hero of Hyrule and the Demon King was pretty disappointing, even if I love the fight with Ganondorf. But I think the biggest issue I have with Twilight Princess's narrative is how much the game takes from Ocarina of Time. I know Zelda plots have followed a similar formula since Link to the Past, but I couldn't help but notice that this game follows a lot of the same beats of Ocarina of Time's story. The story even comes to a halt during the Mirror Quest, just like it did during the quest for the Sages in Ocarina of Time. Twilight Princess's narrative still has enough to make it its own, I feel, but it is hard not to notice the Ocarina of Time influence. It's a narrative I can still enjoy, but there were quite a number of times I was going through the story and I said, oh, just like Ocarina of Time. I know I just made a lot of comparisons to Ocarina of Time, and I don't want to give off the impression that this game is nothing but rehashing of previous material. Twilight Princess may have had a lot of inspiration from its predecessor, but it still manages to be its own thing at the end of the day. Jumping over to the gameplay here, not too much has changed between Wind Waker and this, but the parry system from previously has been removed. Instead, Link can now learn new abilities from this guy here, the Hero Shade. You get about 7 new abilities to use, like this Mortal Draw, this Charged Jump Attack, and you even get moves that look like the ones you had in Wind Waker. I really like using these new abilities, but I didn't use all of them throughout my adventure. I think I only used the Mortal Draw when I was taught it. I just think the other abilities are better, honestly. Link controls about as well as previously, but now he can swing his sword and run at the same time, which is nice. And he can also start charging a spin attack while he's running, and can almost use it on a dime. The spin attack hasn't had this much mobility since Link to the Past, and no, I don't count the Hurricane Spin from Wind Waker. Of course, Link can transform into a wolf for some parts of the game, and you might think it's a brand new gameplay style like the mask forms in Majora's Mask, but it's not really that if you think about it. Wolf Link can still attack enemies as expected, he can still spin attack, and he can dig up hearts and rupees like how regular Link gets that stuff from cutting grass. He can even work together with Midna for this charge move that can take out a lot of enemies at once. He can also pick up scents to find various objects throughout the world. It's really only used for story progression, so I didn't find it too engaging. Midna could also be used to help Wolf Link jump to different areas, and this was fine, if a little scripted for my taste. At the very least, you aren't going back through the exact same areas all the time and have to do this extremely often. Honestly, my only real problem with the wolf form is you don't get to upgrade it at all in the game. There's no upgraded digging, there's no upgraded attack. Everything that you have with the wolf at the start is, unfortunately, all you get throughout the entire adventure. The one thing that I think Zelda fans will notice the most with Twilight Princess's Link is the lack of a magic meter. That threw me off a bit. To be fair though, I did find myself not really using the magic meter outside of the arrows in Deku Leaf and Wind Waker, so I really don't blame the developers for giving it the axe. In case you think the lack of a magic meter makes Link's arsenal less interesting, well, then you'd be incorrect in your assumptions. This Link has a lot more practicality this time around and has a much more physical-based kit. You got this Gale Boomerang that can lock onto objects like previously, and it can even be used to spin these platforms around. Bombs are still useful, and you get them from Barnes here. He's kind of a coward, but he makes great shit. The bow still works like a charm, but now you can combine the arrows with bombs to get bomb arrows. I didn't use them as often as I did in previous playthroughs, but I love using bomb arrows. You get a claw shot in the third dungeon, which is essentially just like the hook shot, but in one of the last dungeons, you get 2 of these motherfuckers.
Suddenly, life has a new meaning to me.
I wish it got more use, but I love the spinner you get in the Arbiter's grounds. It makes traversal so much fun, and while aside from a boss fight it doesn't have much use in combat, I still love it. Link straight up gets a ball and chain as one of his dungeon items, and he just swings this shit around like it's no issue. Sweet Jesus. And of course there's the Dominion Rod, which you can use to control these statues in the Temple of Time and use their hammer to decimate the Goma population. I kept hitting myself so much I swear that Link was going to end up in the same situation as poor Ilya.
Wait a minute, who are you? Hey, I know you. What's your beef, stranger?
The world of Hyrule this time around is much bigger than either Ocarina's Hyrule or Termina. This place can be massive, and just like in Ocarina of Time, there isn't much to do here aside from getting items like heart pieces, which you need 5 of for a full container instead of 4 for some reason, the golden bugs, or the post souls, both of which I'll talk about later. While this version of Hyrule is definitely more visually stimulating compared to the N64 counterpart, the amount of activities to do here wasn't adjusted for its larger size. I love how this Hyrule is designed, but it needed more to do within its world. And when I say I love the design of Hyrule, I really mean that. This game has some of my favorite versions of locations from previous entries in the series. I love this version of Kakariko Village. It looks so much like a town from the Wild West before you actually go to a town straight from the Wild West. I love how many winding pathways there are in Hyrule Castle Town, and with all the people running around, it truly makes this place feel alive. And the nerve of some people just leaving their bridges out in the middle of nowhere. What assholes. The world may be bigger, but the game also lets you warp around via these Twilight portals, and once again, Epona can be used to ride around the field. You could even rename Epona in this game for some reason, and I think I'll name her... I can't do it.
Coward.
Wait, Ilya, you have a present for me? Okay, yeah, sure, thank you. Oh, what the fuck? On your way to dungeons, the game will have you do quite a number of activities beforehand, especially in the first half of the game. Like I mentioned earlier in the story, Link has to travel around areas bathed in Twilight to find these Tears of Light and restore the light spirit of that region. For the Faron and Elden region, the bugs that you need to kill are usually within one major area of the region, and I didn't find these to be that bad. I think these were a nice way to let players explore these areas. I will say though, the Lanayru Tear Hunt wasn't great, since the tears are spread around between Lake Hylia, Zora River, Zora's Domain, and Hyrule Castle Town. And then you have to go back to Lake Hylia for a mini-boss fight with this... thing. Ugh, that's gross. But it's the same process for the first few dungeons. You enter the area, you get the Vessel of Light from the Light Spirit, you get the tears, you get rid of the Twilight, you go to the dungeon, beat the boss, and start it over with the next area. In the second half of the game, it doesn't get as repetitive, and your activities are more varied. You raid this goblin base to get to the Arbiter's grounds, which was fun. You got this snowboarding bit to get to Snow Peak Ruins, which was really fun.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
I didn't mind going through the Lost Woods to get to the Temple of Time, and it was extremely cathartic shooting the Skull Kid after all the shit he did in Majora's Mask. And the first half of the quest to get to the City of the Sky was fun when you had to take out all these Bulbins in the hidden village. I could have gone without going around the map looking for these sky symbols though, this just felt like blatant padding. The dungeons themselves though, best part of the game. I mean, that's kind of how it's always been for Zelda games, but for Twilight Princess, I really mean it. I think these are the best dungeons in the entire franchise. They're all varied in puzzles and activities, their pacing is fantastic, and they meet that perfect middle ground a dungeon should have. The Forest Temple is a great starting dungeon. It's kind of sad that you essentially have to go through the ruins of the Kokiri's home, but you do get to save the monkeys.
Monkey.
The Goron mines were great. I love how the iron boots are used to traverse the walls and ceilings of the dungeon. I don't know why the developers want me to love the iron boots, but hey, mission accomplished. So this is where he got his training for Mario Kart 8. Huh. I'd say that the low point of the dungeons would be the Lakebed Temple. I mean, it's not because it's a bad dungeon or it's because it's this game's closest comparison to the Water Temple, but because compared to the rest of the dungeons, it feels very basic and standard. I mean, I like the idea of changing the water flow with the bridge, but it could have been executed a bit better. I love the Arbiter's Grounds in the Gerudo Desert. This is my all-time favorite dungeon in the franchise. I love the atmosphere here, the puzzles are perfect, the pacing is out of this world, and the spinner makes traversing the dungeon so much fun. The Snow Peak Ruins is one of the best ice dungeons they've ever done. I really like how you're searching for the boss key to unlock the upstairs bedroom, and this poor Yeti lady here, Yetta, I think, keeps forgetting where it is, so you're just finding various types of food. You bring that food to her husband Yeto, and he uses it to make soup. I don't know why, but I find it so fucking funny whenever he pushes you over to get the food from you. Like, shit, why is that so funny? I love the Temple of Time as well. You make one pass through to find the statue, and then you have to go back through all the rooms you just went through to try and figure out how to get the statue through it. I didn't mind the city in the sky too much, but even I'll admit, this dungeon is pretty long. I do love latching from spot to spot with the double claw shots, though. This shit is awesome. Palace of Twilight was pretty neat to go through. I had a lot of fun trying to get these souls away from the Wallmaster things. Hyrule Castle isn't the best final dungeon I've ever gone through, but it left me more satisfied than Ganon's Tower from Wind Waker. I also think the boss fights are better here than last time, and the music that plays whenever a boss's weak point is exposed ramps up the tension big time. Tia Baba is your typical first boss fight in a Zelda game, but I kinda like how you get to work with the mini-boss in order to expose its weak point.
Feed me Seymour.
I liked using Fyrus's chains to trip him and get some shots in, but he was pretty simple altogether. Moorfield brought back bad memories of more fun. It was just really annoying to try to get the eyeball out to stab it, but getting up on its back to stab this motherfucker in the eye was very satisfying. Star-Lord, though. Oh, Star-Lord. This fight is awesome. The first phase has you trying to maneuver around these skeleton soldiers to break the vertebrae of the boss's spine, and the second phase has you jumping between walls with the spinner to chase the head of Star-Lord down. Zelda was fun. I think it's definitely unique, but it wasn't too spectacular. I'm also not a fan of the random ass jump scare. Hi. The boss fight with Armagoma is satisfying to me. I absolutely hate spiders, so getting to control these statues' arms to smash this son of a bitch into next week. Ooh, I think I need to change my pants. Also, how is the eye itself a spider? This isn't anatomically correct. Argarok is also a fun time. Part of that reason is the double claw shot, to be fair, but the best part is, again, hopping onto the boss's back and slashing the shit out of the boss. Swinging around the P-hats makes me feel like Link. I really like Xant's boss fights as he takes you through the various boss arenas, and the whole time he's just going to balls to the walls insane.
And I like to spin.
While I was not a fan of Ganondorf hijacking the end of the story, the boss fights with him were pretty damn good. The fight with Puppet Zelda is more energy tennis. Old habits die hard, huh, old man? It's nice to finally get another Ganon fight on console, and I do like how much they focused on the beast-like design. Ah, that goat herding is really coming in handy. The fight on horseback can be a bit tricky since you have to stay in range to shoot the light arrows, but damn, the one-on-one fight with Ganondorf is awesome. No magic, no transformations, no princess assistance, just you and the big man. Hey, look what I got. Look what I got. Look at this.
What is that?
Hopping over to the side quests real quick, they definitely are better than the ones that Wind Waker offered, and I'm just glad there's no drawn-out trading side quests this time either. I mentioned the golden bugs and the postos earlier, so let's cover the former first. You can find a lot of these golden bugs around the map, and you can collect them and give them to this little lady Agatha here, who everyone hates for some reason. I don't know, man. I like her. And it's totally not because she's putting more rupees in my pocket. The quest itself isn't too bad, and if you know where to look, you can get most of the bugs before you even reach the third dungeon. You're getting the 2 wallet upgrades here, though, so if that's not something you're interested in, then you can go ahead and skip this quest. But for some reason, we needed to have 2 collecting side quests, and that's where the Poe Souls come in. On your way to the second revisit in Hyrule Castle, you run into this guy, Giovanni, who's been cursed for his greed, and he asks you to bring him Poe Souls in order to break his curse. There's 60 of these things scattered around Hyrule, and while there aren't as many as the Gold Skulltulas in Ocarina of Time, they have their own issues. For one, you can only find these things at night unless it's in a special area, cave, or a dungeon, and 2, You can only defeat these things as Wolf Link, and taking them out might be quick, but the moments you're waiting for the weak points to be exposed really begins to add up. I would say you can go for it since a lot of the pose you find on your way throughout the game, but the reward sucks. It's more infinite money! I'd be more excited if my wallet wasn't capped at 2,000, and I know I can do the Cave of Shadows to get 9,999, but when am I ever gonna need that much money? The various minigames around the kingdom were fun little distractions, and that's all I could ask for, although I got a feeling that the goats are out for my head. There's also this Cave of Ordeals in the Gerudo Desert that is essentially an enemy rush dungeon where they just throw a good majority of the enemies at you. It's like the Pit of 100 Trials from the Paper Mario games if I can compare it to something, but this one is only 50 floors. Bring potions and fairies with you. This place legitimately kicked my ass, and I thought I was going to have to do the whole thing over again near the very end of it when they throw 3 fucking dark nuts at you. God, I got out of there by the skin of my teeth.
Master, there's an 169% chance it's a skill issue.
Oh, save it for Skyward Sword.
If you have the Wolf Link and Midna amiibo, you can enter the Cave of Shadows, which it's the same thing as the Cave of Ordeals, but you're limited to just being Wolf Link. I didn't bother getting through the whole thing since your only reward is getting the wallet that can hold the max amount of rupees. And since you never need that much money in the game unless you want to abuse the magic armor, I don't think it's necessary to go through. Actually, you can use some of the other Zelda amiibo for some added bonuses. Scanning Link and Toon Link will replenish your arrows to the max, Zelda and Sheik restore you to full health, and scanning Ganondorf will double the amount of damage you take. But if you really want a challenge, you can scan the Ganondorf amiibo while you're in hero mode and you take 4 times the normal amount of damage. So go ahead and try it out if you want to prove you're not a pussy. Remember how I said in the Majora's Mask review that my least favorite thing about the game was its opening? It's the same issue here, but it's a lot worse. It takes around 2 hours to get to the first dungeon. Now, granted, I think the opening section does do a good job establishing Link and the kids of Ordon Village, and the game does get the player ready for the adventure ahead. But previous games in the series were able to do that in a much shorter time frame. I don't think it's as bad as, say, games like Kingdom Hearts 2 or even Skyward Sword if I can jump the gun a bit here, but it's still definitely an issue. The intro suffers from doing its job too well, honestly. Twilight Princess will still take you quite a bit to complete. It kinda threw me off when I looked at my completed save file and I had around 30 hours of game time. It was long, sure, but honestly, the game didn't feel that long. Were there times that I got tired? Yeah, but that was probably because I was still playing the game 6 hours after I started. But if you plan on picking the game up, be prepared to put a lot of time into it. Okay, so let's talk about those graphics real quick. So the main goal of the art style was to capture that realistic look that fans loved about Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and were they able to capture that? I don't know, you tell me. I really don't mind how this game looks, and I think the HD remaster does a great job at clearing the general picture up. Environments and textures are well constructed for the time, and I think the game just nails the atmospheric world it was trying to go for. The models, though, Jesus fuck. Okay, the main cast looks fine. Link, Zelda, Midna, Zant, Ganondorf, they all look great, and I love these new designs for the Triforce trio. Everyone else either looks passable or the newest source of my nightmare fuel. And man, some of the faces these characters can make are just a bit off. I think the game also has a really big issue of overusing bloom to kind of hide all the inconsistencies it has. There were a couple times that they used way too much of it during some of the cutscenes, and it just ended up washing the whole picture out. I also wish the game was a bit more colorful. The game isn't completely void of color, but after playing games like Majora's Mask and Wind Waker with their vibrant color palettes, it threw me off a bit coming back to this game. While I still think it looks great, I can't help but admit that its general art style and direction haven't aged the best. The music is once again great. I'm not going to lie though, some of the synth instruments they used were a bit distracting in some pieces. For a few of them, you can tell they took them straight from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and I'm pretty sure the snowboard minigame theme was composed with the same instruments used in Mario 64. For the bigger pieces though, it all sounds great. This game has a great main theme. I love Midna's theme and Midna's Lament. Ordon Village and Hyrule Castle Town are great. Hyrule Field, Kakariko Village, the Sacred Grove, Death Mountain, Zora's Domain, a lot of great pieces here. I think the soundtrack beats out Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time for sure, but Majora's Mask is still the king. Twilight Princess was another great entry in the Zelda series that I thankfully still love to this day. With great combat, items, characters, locations, as well as it being the apex of the standard Zelda formula, I believe it to be a game that any Zelda fan can enjoy. The game's lengthy intro, its big side quests, and some parts of the early game may be a turnoff for some players. A lot of those issues don't bother me too much, and despite its issues, I can still classify this as one of my favorite Zelda games, But after replaying it, I don't think I can classify this as one of my favorite games of all time anymore. I still love it, but not as much as I used to. I think it is going to be a bit before I pick it back up for another playthrough though. If you're a Zelda fan who has yet to experience this game, please give it a shot. Just be prepared to put more time into it compared to the others in the series. This is a Zelda fan's Zelda game, and that's the main reason why I don't think I would recommend Twilight Princess to new players. I think there are other games in the series that do a better job getting you into the series. If you're able to grab a copy for the Nintendo GameCube or the Wii U, then go ahead and do so. The HD remaster is definitely the one I would recommend you get over the other two versions of the game, thanks to some of the quality of life improvements made. But if that's not an option, I think you can have fun with either the GameCube or Wii originals.
But we're not done with the world of Twilight Princess just yet, as in 2007, Nintendo released a spin-off title for the Nintendo Wii in the form of Link's crossbow training.
What about Twilight Princess Picross?
Oh yeah, sure, we can talk about that. Here's Twilight Princess Picross. And that was Twilight Princess Picross.
You fucker.
In all seriousness though, if you are thinking about picking the game up, please do so as soon as possible. It's going to become lost media within a few weeks. I won't be picking it up because fuck Picross.
Smooth brain.
Okay, I know I said this marathon was going to cover 8 games and not 9, but I couldn't help myself here. It's Link's crossbow training, for God's sake. Link's crossbow training was created as a tech demo for the new Wii Zapper accessory, or new at the time anyway. I had a laugh when I was doing research for this game because I found out that Miyamoto had proposed a Terminator-style plot about a time warp to the future so that they could justify Link wielding a gun, but that was immediately vetoed. God, I'd pay money to see that. There's no story here at all, you're just going through different areas of Twilight Princess shooting targets with your crossbow. You got your standard levels where you just fly around different areas and shoot big targets. There's stages with a third-person perspective shooting different enemies, and there are also these stages where you move Link around an area to hunt down enemies. Kinda like the Hidden Village section of Twilight Princess. The more targets you shoot in a row, the bigger your score multiplier will be, and you get more points for shooting targets in the center. If you manage to shoot every main target in the stage, you also get a completion bonus that's also based on targets shot in a row. Levels are split into 3 stages per level, and depending on how many points you got over the course of all 3 levels, you get 4 different medals based on your performance, including bronze, silver, gold, and the special platinum rank. And I gotta say, it could be extremely addicting trying to get the most amount of points possible. Every time I play this game, I'm always trying to beat my best scores. I love a lot of the levels in this game, but there are a few that I don't like that much. The Aralphos level can be a pain because I'm still not sure how to properly take them down. I usually just use char shots and then that seems to do the job, but I'm not sure if that's the correct way to do it. I'm also not a fan of this one level in the Hyrule Castle Graveyard because the keys are such small targets. My favorite levels in the game are the ones where you get to move Link around to hunt down targets. Like legit, if we ever got a sequel to this game in the future, we need more of these, please. There's only 2 of them, but I really like the boss fights between the Dark Nut and Stalord. Why the Dark Nut is made up of bats all of a sudden, I have no idea, and Stalord's definitely a bit more mobile than his fight on the Wii. Oh, for fuck's sake, it's another shooting the hands boss!
Dang it, Bobby.
Honestly, my biggest problem with Link's crossbow training is also the same one I have with Tidicris Uprising. My hands cramp up if I put more than half an hour into the game, and I know you don't have to use the Wii Zapper to play the game, but I like the authentic experience, damn it, leave me alone. But at the end of the day, I still really like this game. It's got great levels and plenty of shit to shoot, and the scoring system and short levels lead to a lot of replayability. I wish it was a bit longer, but what we have here, I think, is a solid distraction within the world of Twilight Princess. If you still have a Wii or Wii U, I'd say go ahead and go for Link's crossbow training if you find it. I found my copy at my local game store for $3, so it shouldn't be too hard to track down.
Well, 6 games down, or 7 I guess. 2 more to go. And if you have any memories about Twilight Princess, or Link's crossbow training, or Twilight Princess Picross, let me know down in the comments below. I'd like to read a couple of them. As for the next game though, I'm a little nervous going back to this one. We're ascending to the skies above with the HD remaster of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword.
Are you done yet?
Yeah, I'm done. Can I have my stuff back?
I guess. So when are you gonna play Phantom Hourglass?
Not for a while. I'm sticking to the mainline entries, and Skyward Sword's already one of the longest games in the franchise.
Isn't Skyward Sword the shitty one?
No! If anything, Phantom Hourglass is the shitty one. Well, I deserve that. Well, it's gonna be a while before the next video, folks. Not only is Skyward Sword one of the longest games in the franchise, I also gotta bike my way home, so if you don't hear from me for a few weeks, you know why. So, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.